Welcome to episode 107 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. We've got a loaded show this week, unexpectedly. A lot to talk about. We got Ravens stuff. We got technically Orioles stuff, but more so baseball in general. We've got NFL stuff. We've got all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to waste any time laying out the entire show because, quite frankly, we might go in a completely different direction. There's just so much to get to. I did want to open up real quick. I know last week we made mention of the donations that were going to Mo Gabba. Jeremy Kahn from 105.7 The Fan was organizing that. I don't know what the final total was as of Tuesday when he met up with Mo and his mom. And I know he's still collecting now. So if you weren't able to donate before and you do still want to donate, whatever it is, still accepting donations, I'm sure. You can go to Jeremy's Twitter page. We retweeted it on the Charm City page. You can find it there. So the PayPal information's there. The Venmo information is there. I mean, it was in less than 24 hours, they were at 10K. So I don't even know how high they got on that donation total, but I'm sure it was pretty high. I know Jeremy was able to find someone reached out, wanted to donate a new bed. And boy, what a week it was for Mo. I mean, what a special week. You know, he graduated from middle school. It's crazy to think that he's going to high school. But that's what's going to happen. And, you know, so many great people coming together to help out this kid. They had two, drive-by parades. A bunch of people got in their cars and did a drive-by of Mo's apartment. Everyone was honking their horn, had signs, waving, cheering for Mo. The Ravens sent Poe was there, the mascot was there, Bradley Bozeman was there, Trey Mancini was there. A lot of, the Ravens sent the band, or some members of the band were there. It was just a great event. And then one last thing that I thought was just really awesome. Eric Arditi from Barstool Sports has also been pretty close with Mo and his mom, and has helped them out quite a few times. Organized an amazing video. Reached out to a bunch of different people that already know who Mo is. The Trey Mancinis, the local guys, Orioles players, some Ravens players, but also some other people, and put together this great compilation video of people giving Mo a congratulations, a shout out on graduating middle school, some words of encouragement. I mean, it was an amazing video. And the Big Show, the wrestler, the Big Show was in there. I thought that was really cool. Mo's a big wrestling fan. And, and then, you have Mancini obviously in there, very emotional. And then the grand finale was Cal Ripken. Had a very special message, and if you haven't seen the video, I can't really do it justice through words. You got to go watch it for yourself, but it's hard not to get choked up when you get to the end, so I'll just say that.
Yeah, it was really difficult. I had a moment when I was watching it. I can't even pretend to deny that, but I mean, just an absolutely beautiful week for Mo. Everybody kind of stepping up, and Eric and Jeremy kind of leading that, and everybody that took time to stop by and see Mo, or to cut a video message and send it to Eric so he could put it all together. I mean, you can't say enough about those two and their efforts, and everybody's efforts just to kind of give Mo the congratulations he deserved.
Yeah, and we hope it continues. We're obviously all rooting for Mo. We're rooting for you here on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast, and just wanted to make mention of that early because I know last week it was some somber news that led to, the donations and everything, but this past week has just been nothing but heartwarming and positive in my eyes, and it was a great reaction to see from the community after some more disappointing news prior. So I'm sure that love and outpouring of support will continue, but let's get down to business here. We've got plenty to talk about. Let's start with Lamar Jackson. Been making a couple headlines this week. Some good, some bad, some startling, some scary. We'll start with that one. Got a video of Lamar Jackson appeared this week on social media playing some beach football with some friends. No big deal. I'm sure a lot of guys are doing this. Spend some time outside. Heck, I would do the same if I was in their position. No big deal there on the surface, but the video shows Lamar dropping back to throw a pass, and then he decides he's going to take off and scramble for a run. Again, that's what Lamar does, having a little fun on the beach, and he takes off. He's running, darting left and right, and the camera's a little shaky, so we don't get the clearest picture, but we do see him kind of take a tumble over a jet ski that was sitting there right in the shallow water, right there on the shoreline. And he, somersaults into the water, whatever, gets completely drenched. And we luckily find out that nothing bad happened. He didn't get injured in any way, no injury, walked away unscathed. But this started a debate, not really a debate, but it started a discussion this week of, are you concerned when you see stuff like this? Are the Ravens definitely going to say something to him about it? Could this have turned into something worse? And yeah, obviously it could have turned into something worse. Professional athletes have suffered season-ending injuries, really bad injuries, doing far more tame things. Guys have suffered really bad injuries in their own house. That's what happens. So seeing him run around on the beach, does it make me nervous? Yeah, sure. I mean, he's the MVP of the league. You want to protect him at all costs. I'm not going to tell him to sit in the house and be in bubble wrap in the off season. I mean, go out there and have fun, but if you're going to play beach football, maybe drop back and pass. Don't take off and run. I mean, if you've ever run on the beach, you know how difficult it is to run on an uneven surface like that, barefoot, where your feet are sinking and it's just inconsistent. It would be so easy to twist an ankle or hyperextend something. So the fact that he walked away uninjured, happy about that, but I'm sure teammates, Harbaugh, other people from the team have reached out and said, hey, maybe be a little bit smarter about this. At the end of the day, it's not a big deal, mainly because he didn't get injured, but it would be such a fine line there where if he did suffer even a minor injury, it would be so much bigger of a deal. I'm sort of just chalking this up to his youthful, I don't know, not stupidity, but just being a kid, basically. I mean, what did we see last offseason of him taking that video of him speeding down the highway, jamming out in his car? It's like, that's, don't do that. That's stupid, Lamar. That's being a kid. You're not thinking. This is far not as bad as that, as speeding on the highway, running on the beach and playing football. That's not that bad, but still something could have happened. So I don't know. Maybe this was blown up more than it should have, but here we are talking about it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the belief that if he doesn't tumble over the jet ski, it's a non-story. They might show it just to show, like, holy cow, Lamar Jackson's really fast. But I think if he doesn't tumble over the jet ski, we're not having this conversation. At some point, these are people just like everyone else. And if he wants to go play football on the beach, I mean, I wonder what else they do that we never see, like, playing pickup games in their backyard with their friends. Like, you can get hurt doing anything. Remember, Terrell Suggs got hurt playing basketball, like a charity basketball game. He tore his Achilles the one year, and people were panning him for that. Like, they're not supposed to work out. They're not allowed to go to the gym. They're not allowed to run on the beach with their friends. Like, at some point, these are human beings. And would it have been horrible for Lamar to go down with something like that? Yes, obviously. Would people have ran with the narrative like, oh, it looks like he's immature, he's not ready to be the face of the league or a franchise quarterback? The takes would have been coming in strong, and I'm sure they were coming in strong to the fan with even some people that were upset about the video. I had less of a concern about this than I think one of the other things we'll talk about. I think if we're still planning on covering his comments later. But this, for me, is a non-story.
The one thing I did think of, and I just thought this was kind of funny in a dark sort of way, but could you imagine the optics of Lamar injuring himself while playing, beach football? And over the past 2 years, you've had all of his naysayers and critics just nonstop chatter saying, well, he's going to get injured. He's going to get injured. And this whole time they assumed it would be on the football field. And
yeah, that would have been awful.
I don't know what I would
And he
have
was
done.
running too. Like they would have had a field day
Oh,
with
yeah.
that, sadly as well. So I think I'm very happy nothing came of this. But you're right; it would have been, a nightmare. Not only that he was hurt, but just listening to people kind of give him shit about, oh look, he got hurt running on the beach. Oh, if he would have just thrown it, he would have been fine. Like that would have been a tough thing to deal with on top of the fact that he got injured. So I'm glad nothing came of it.
Honestly, I think people are making this into a bigger deal than it is, mainly because Lamar has been presented without fault or as almost perfect throughout his career. I mean, besides that highway speeding video and this, and again, this isn't even that bad, it's been nothing but Lamar's the greatest. Lamar's, without fault. He says all the right things in the media. Like, he's never misspoke about anything. So when he does do something like this, which could be, perceived as a mistake or an accident, I feel like people jump on it because he doesn't say stupid stuff in the media. Like, I don't know, we don't get a chance to really criticize him on anything. So I think that might be leading to this too.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. I mean, he definitely has that. Look at this guy, he's so humble. He says all the right things. He's so humble. He says all the right things. I think people are looking, as you said, to just kind of look for a reason to tear people down. I mean, that's kind of the society, unfortunately, that we live in. So I think that definitely plays into it as well.
So another thing that not only popped into my head, but the minds of many other people, mainly because these two things happen in such close proximity to each other, but the Madden curse has to pop into your head. I know we've discussed this briefly before. Ian isn't as superstitious as I am, but it pops into your head, as I said, because the Madden cover was revealed. We knew Lamar was going to be on the cover, but the actual cover art and trailer for the game was released this week. Kind of an interesting direction. The cover looks unlike any other Madden cover before because they couldn't do a formal, photo shoot because of the pandemic. So they had to use a bunch of pre-existing photos that have been taken of Lamar, and they made sort of a collage type of cover. It looks all right. I would have preferred, it would have been cool to see him get the formal cover shoot to see what it would have looked like, but he's still on the cover. It's still cool. Still the second player. We have two Ravens players to be on the cover of Madden in such a short, 25, 24-year history. That's pretty cool. And but yeah, the curse does pop into your head. If Lamar had gotten hurt here, it definitely would have been chalked up to the curse. That would have been his
doubt.
moment. We all know last year Patrick Mahomes, it looked like was heading towards being the latest victim of the curse when he got an injury mid-season, missed some time. He did bounce back from it, and then obviously, as we know, goes on to win the Super Bowl. A lot of people said that he broke the curse last year. I think I subscribe to that. I think if you win the Super Bowl, that's probably the ultimate pinnacle you can reach in the league. So if that's not breaking it, I don't know what is. But the evidence of a curse is more staggering than anything. You can pinpoint something, I believe, every single year. There's videos of this out there if you want to go look it up. I'm not going to rattle off what the curse was every year, but we know some of the bigger ones. But there are videos, there's articles out there documenting year by year what happened to each player on the cover. So only time will tell if anything happens to Lamar. And honestly, this will be a discussion we come back to later in the episode, but maybe Lamar's Madden curse will be not getting to play a season at all.
Yeah, I mean, that would be is it really a good Madden curse? But yeah, that would probably be the worst, right? I mean, not even being able to get on the field, not even being able to attempt to go back-to-back MVPs or win a Super Bowl. I mean, that would be pretty terrible, but I'm kind of leaning into the boat of we might not be getting any American sports back for quite some time other than golf, which now had somebody test positive. I mean, NASCAR hasn't had any issues just yet, but I'm getting less and less sure that we're going to be seeing American sports come back, and that includes football.
Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into that in a little bit, but let's finish up this Lamar discussion. Got a couple of quotes we want to get to. I know you had one you wanted to get to, but I'm going to open with the one that made headlines, and that was him talking about the playoff loss to the Titans. He was on some podcast, I think. It was on Complex, one of their podcasts. Just talking about how the entire season the Ravens weren't peeking ahead, weren't looking at the next opponent. They were focused on each game as it came. And he says, quote, "That's what happened in the playoffs. We end up losing to the team people had us favored over. It's any given Sunday. You can't underestimate any team, no opponent, and that's what we did." So I think a lot of people thought this was the case anyway, that the Ravens were looking past the Titans to the Chiefs. You were the home team. You were the best team in the league. You had the MVP as your quarterback. You were just absolutely not just winning. I mean, you were stomping teams. You were blowing teams out. And you're going up against the Titans, who are coming off of a nice win against the Patriots on the road. Nice playoff win. But clearly the Ravens are the much, much better team. Heavy favorites. I don't remember what the betting line was in that game, but I'm sure it was pretty.
It was almost 10.
Yeah, pretty widespread there. So, yeah, and the Ravens, again, not surprising to hear Lamar come out and say that they looked past them. I'm not, by no means am I discrediting the Titans. If you remember our immediate reactions to that loss, I was giving the Titans nothing but praise. I thought they played a phenomenal game from not just a game plan standpoint, but defensive execution, their secondary's coverage, and just the play calling in the red zone, changing things up.
I mean, it was an ugly performance all around.
Mm-hmm. So I'll do credit to the Titans, obviously, but I think there's no denying that the Ravens were looking too far ahead and looking to that, potentially hosting a AFC Championship game. Hosting the Chiefs. So, yeah, we're so far removed from the loss. It's no big deal. The Ravens are, a favored team going into this season. Whether we have a season or not, ignore that. But the Ravens are favored. And, if this was like their last shot at going deep into the playoffs and then they have to go through some sort of soft rebuild, this would add more insult to injury. But at this point, the Titans' loss, I think we've all come to terms with it. It is what it is. It sucks. It's going to sting, but we've had plenty of losses watching the Ravens that have stung, and some much worse than this, so it's whatever.
I'll be honest, it's up there for me, though. It's not the worst. I don't think anything will be worse than 2011 in New England. I mean, that was probably the worst, but this one's definitely up there, and I think it's odd to me defense immediately saying, well, that's a coaching problem. Well, what about the 12 weeks in a row they were focused and they weren't peeking ahead and they didn't underestimate anybody and they were blowing teams off the field? Like, is that a coaching problem too, or do the coaches get credit for that? I just think, Nolan, and we've had this conversation, I think we're just getting to a point where, he's getting too big. Like nothing can ever possibly be his fault. Everything bad that happens is everyone else's fault. And everything good that happens is Lamar's, because of Lamar's doing. And I think it's a dangerous precedent that we're setting because it's making it impossible to expect improvements or to, say an ill word about Lamar. I mean, you even said it yourself in the last segment. What I think of that week is, remember the big trust T-shirts that the team was going to put out? And it was about 48 hours before game time that this rumor started. And the players came out. They were all angry about these shirts. This is Lamar's thing. I don't understand why they would do that, blah, 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 blah. Why were they not focused on the Titans? I mean, that's what I can't figure out. They were spending time worrying about a T-shirt that the team was going to make to sell to fans. It seems like the players weren't particularly focused. And is that a partial coaching problem? Sure it is. But at the end of the day, this team hadn't shown signs of struggling to focus or, they're looking past people or they're taking people lightly. It hadn't been a trademark of their team. But that particular week, I do remember that story came out, and it seems like they kind of got distracted. And again, it doesn't forgive Harbaugh because I'm a Harbaugh defender. But at the end of the day, the players play, and the Ravens didn't execute. They didn't play well. Everything that could have went wrong. They didn't do anything they did throughout the season. They turned the ball over 3 times. They didn't do that very often. They were 1 for 4 on 4th down. They were 1 for 5 in the red zone. These were things that they weren't doing, and they weren't focused. but I don't know how much of it's on coaching. I don't know how much of it's on players, but everybody deserves some of the blame. Everybody deserves some of the credit. So that's where I stand on it. I'm not surprised to hear him say that. I do think if I was a Titans player, I'd be a little insulted by that. But I wouldn't call it bulletin board material or anything silly like that. I think most people believed the Ravens overlooked the Titans. They didn't take them seriously, and they paid for that.
Well, I think we'd have a story here if Lamar came out and said, man, our coaching staff let us down, or the game plan, or, wording like that, like the play calling was bad, the game plan was bad, anything that would have pushed blame onto the coaches. Again, I agree with you. It's an entire team thing. The whole team failed. It's a team sport. No one person is responsible for that loss. Really, you can say any loss. I know we always have that debate when the Ravens suffer a tough loss and it's close or it comes down to the wire. Who's the loss on? Is it on one player? Is it not? This one, you can't even have the debate. I mean, it was a complete team meltdown besides Hollywood, pretty much. It was a complete a team meltdown. So, yeah, that was one of the quotes that made headlines. And the other one, I don't know. I had trouble finding the specific quote here, but I know you wanted to mention it. So I'll let you take the lead here, but I couldn't find it written down anywhere.
Yeah, it was basically like, I think it was part of the same interview or maybe an interview later in the week, but it was like, how can you contain Lamar Jackson? And he responded, you can't. And I understand that when you're as great as Lamar was last year and, the MVP of the league, joining Patrick Mahomes as like co-faces of the league, that comment makes sense, but I just felt it was kind of unnecessary. And then after you had just said, well, we're not going to overlook people anymore, but now you're telling us that you can't be stopped. So I'm just struggling to see, to me, those are contradicting points. Like, people have stopped you. You've lost games. You haven't played well. I understand it's the cachet answer to say, well, nobody can stop me. Like, I get it, but I had more of a problem with that comment than the comment about overlooking the Titans. I think we can all agree that that's what happened, but I just don't want his star to be getting too big and have it go to his head. Like, you hear about how humble he is and his humility, and that's one of the things we've praised him for. That wasn't a very humble comment, in my opinion. But again, I'm not going to rake the guy over the coals for it. Do I wish he wouldn't have said it? Of course. I definitely wish he wouldn't have said it. Because damn well, somebody beats him this year, people are going to be like, oh, I thought you can't be stopped. And if you saw the tweets with the quote in it, all these people responding, 28-12, 28-12. Oh, the Browns seem to stop you pretty well. Blah, 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 blah. Like, you're just inviting the hate in. And I'm just I'm not a fan of speaking out in the media about stuff like that and calling yourself unstoppable. And it's not for me.
Yeah, I haven't seen the exact quote. At first, I thought the first thing that came to mind was some of the Madden promotion stuff, which was slightly different. The trailer they released, which is pretty cool. It was a cool trailer, the way they were able to grab clips, and then they had to use like a virtual Zoom call with Lamar to insert it in there. But the way they did it worked out pretty well. And he said something in the trailer that was like, how do you game plan, or the teams are going to game plan for you? And he's like, well, let's step on the field and we'll see. And to me, that was like, well, it's just part of the trailer. It's just hyping up the video game and playing as Lamar and, running all over everyone in the video game. That wasn't a big deal, but I don't know. I mean, there could be something to it that at some point Lamar turns into this big diva, but based on what we've seen from his personality so far, I think that's a long shot. But at the same time, he's not going to say the right thing or the perfect thing
exactly
every single time he talks to the media. He's going to say something, and again, this isn't even that controversial, to say that, until he comes out and says, like, I don't know. I don't even know what he could say, but, how about this? Something that we've seen from Baker Mayfield. Maybe being a little too critical of a teammate. Something like that. Poor word choice.
We're getting spicy with the media, like with a comeback. Like, and they rile him up, too, in Cleveland. I mean, their media, they try to get under his skin, and he plays back sometimes. But I know, and it's different. Lamar just won the MVP of the league. People were banging on Baker last offseason for all the comments he was making. Now, he hadn't proven it the way that Lamar did last year, so it's a little different. But I think that, it's not the end of the world. I'll put it to you that way.
All right, well, let's get off Lamar here. Too much Lamar talk. Way too much. All right, let's stick with the NFL. I don't know. This really doesn't have to be a NFL-specific topic because when it popped into my head, I was like, well, let's talk about this, the NFL and what their season format could look like. And then we got all these, all this news of athletes at the college level, the professional level, all these different sports testing positive this past week for the coronavirus. And it just sort of turned into this whole state of sports topic as a whole. But I do want to start with the NFL because what made headlines was Dr. Fauci made a comment this week saying that if the NFL is going to play this fall, they would have to utilize a similar format to what the NBA is planning on doing, an isolated bubble format where everyone kind of plays in the same area, is housed in the same area. There's not any traveling, eliminating that sort of thing, cutting out outside presence, keeping everyone isolated. And okay, I mean, I know Fauci praised the NBA's plan. We haven't seen it in action yet, so we really don't know if it's going to work or not. But it seems like it's the best bet, the best idea for the NBA. But for other sports, the bubble format, I don't know if it's really going to work. And the NFL is the big question mark there. So the two things that I came away from this Fauci comment were, one, is Fauci even correct? And then two, is it even possible to play the NFL season in a bubble environment? I don't know. I'm having a hard time imagining such a thing right now. This time last year, if you told me about playing the NBA season in this format, I would have said, man, that's really out there. That's really weird. That's really goofy. Why would we be in that situation? But when you get into the context, when you get thrown into the fire, so to speak, and now we have this NBA season proposed, it makes sense. Look, if you're not going to have fans attending NFL games, if we've already conceded that fans won't be in attendance, I guess that's a start. That's a start towards the bubble environment, or the case for having a bubble environment for the NFL. But I don't know. I mean, I just think the NFL is so much different than the NBA. You have way more personnel, larger rosters, larger coaching staffs, everybody that surrounds an NFL team, just way more people than your average, or not your average, every NBA team. So I think it's a lot different. You can go down to the Disney complex and have 3 small arenas where you have 3 or 4 different basketball courts where you can have games going at the same time if you wanted to. But I don't know if they're going to do that. I think they're going to play at different times. But that works for basketball. I don't know if there's anywhere you could have that for the NFL, like playing on, having 3 to 4 regulation football fields in the same area. And then even then, how would you work the schedule? Because the way the NFL schedule works, everyone plays on the same day, or besides, your Thursday and Monday night primetime games, everyone plays on Sunday. And you've got how many games going on at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock on Sunday? Like 10?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's 11 and it's miserable. The 4 o'clock window has like 3 games.
So you've got all these games going on at the same time. You can't there's nowhere, I don't know if there's anywhere you could have all of this going on in the same area unless you broke it down and teams were playing on a Saturday or something. But then, you got to deal with people having a shorter week to prepare. There's no travel, so that's a factor. It's just, there's so much to iron out here. And without saying too much, is it even worth it? Because we've got, Ezekiel Elliott tested positive. I know that's just one player, but, if one person tested positive, there's many other people out there that probably have it that haven't been tested or have been tested and are awaiting results. It's like we're trying to jump through all these hoops in the case of baseball, trying to figure out the financials, the other sports just trying to figure out the logistics. But is it even worth it? Because once you come back, you're going to have a star player test positive, and then they have to sit out 2 weeks, and then it's not just going to be one player. It's going to be multiple players on every team that are inevitably going to test positive and have to sit out. So at that point, you have to question, is the juice worth the squeeze? And that's just kind of where I'm sitting right now after this week and what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the show me it's going to work mentality. I mean, nobody wants sports back more than I do, but I don't think that they're going to come back. You're already seeing complications. The NHL opened up some of their training facilities. A lot of people on the Lightning have already contracted the virus. Their staff members, other groups of people. One of the star players in the NHL, Austin Matthews, probably a top 10 or top 15 player, has the virus for the Maple Leafs, so it's happening in Toronto. I don't feel confident that it's going to get back, like we're going to get started in July for the NBA or July for the NHL. Until they can prove that any of this is going to work and be effective and actually be carried out, I don't think the NFL should even be thinking about, should we do the bubble? Should we? I don't think it's going to work, Nolan, and that's a terrible reality because eventually the soccer leagues overseas will stop and we'll be back to golf and NASCAR and MMA, which, if that's your cup of tea, so be it. I like football, hockey, and basketball. I've got none of that right now. So I'm with you, though. I'm getting increasingly less optimistic that we're going to be able to even have NFL football, let alone not have the fans go to the game. The one thing I'll say is this is going to be, I think the NFL will fight tooth and nail more than the other leagues to get this done. They're probably one of the most powerful organizations in the world. Besides the government and some of your bigger religious organizations that are out there. They have their own day. I mean, Sunday it's the NFL. Like that's how it works. They're going to swing at this thing as much as they can. And I think they'll try. And again, the big test is, remember when the NBA started talking about this is, if we get started and, 6 people test positive, we can't just stop playing. Like they've put a lot of time and money and effort into getting this set up. But now it seems like once the players have started to test positive, the leagues are starting to panic. So they said they weren't going to do this, but at some point, either you're going to play or you're not going to play. And if you're going to play, I think we both agree, you're going to have people test positive for this virus. And at that point, for you to shut your league down again, I mean, it just seems like you're putting a lot of time and effort and resources, money and time otherwise, and things otherwise to get this going. But I'm not increasingly confident that it's going to happen for us this year.
Right, and it's not even about shutting down for me, because I know that's where you have kind of like a split opinion on this. Some people say that, you're going to see a couple positive tests pop up and everything's going to get shut down again. I would think that they're going to keep going because they have the plan in place that right now they're saying if someone tests positive, they go isolated. The NBA even said that they're going to get a second test to make sure that it wasn't, a false positive. And then there's a whole, set of things that could happen from there. But the basics of it are if you test positive, you get isolated. That's all well and good until that player is LeBron James.
And it's the NBA Finals.
Right. Now your product is significantly hurt. And sure, things aren't going to you're not going to pack things up and go home, but that's where I say, is the juice worth the squeeze, where, if LeBron goes out or anybody, Giannis, somebody like that, or multiple of them, again, it doesn't have to be just one. Or, look at the case of baseball. 9 people in the Phillies facility tested positive. Not all 9 of them were players, but 9 people that are around the building every day. That, again, it's not going to be one player here, one player there. You could have cases where, let's say the baseball season gets going. You have 5 guys out right now that aren't injured. They tested positive for the coronavirus. You have to replace them. Do you have the personnel to replace them? Same thing with basketball, smaller rosters, much smaller rosters.
Basketball, you definitely don't have it. I mean, you can call up some D-League guys, but...
Right, no one wants to see that. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. If you have even 2 guys on your NBA team that have to sit out for 2 weeks, I mean, that just pretty much, ends your season right there, probably.
Well, imagine it's a 1-8 during a 1-8 seed matchup.
Oh, yeah.
And LeBron James and Anthony Davis have to miss the series with coronavirus, and the Lakers lose to the Pelicans. I mean, like, are we really going to set ourselves up for this type of situation? Because it seems like that's where we're headed. And if I were to be on one side or the other, I think if they're going to play, they need to do what they're saying they're going to do, and quarantine the player for 2 weeks, and that player can't play, and it is what it is. I do think that, but the more points you bring up, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like, is that stupid? Or are we setting ourselves up for, let's say it's the Lakers and the Bucks in the NBA Finals, and Giannis and Eric Bledsoe and then LeBron and Anthony Davis are all out with coronavirus. Are we going to, enjoy that NBA Finals? Are we going to count that the same as we would another NBA Finals? I don't know. I mean, it's a ton of things to think about, and none of them are particularly positive.
Yeah, I mean, if you still want to watch basketball, you still want to watch basketball. Nothing's probably going to stand in your way. But presenting the idea of a finals without LeBron James, a finals in which LeBron's team is in the finals, but he's not there, I'll say that, would not sit well with the NBA fans. And I don't mean that if someone tests positive, they shouldn't have to be quarantined. That's obviously what you do. I'm just saying, if that's what you're going to have to do, then why even get started at all? But if you're okay with that, if the NBA is okay with that, if they think they can put in a compelling product out there, then so be it. And hey, if they think at this point that they could be the only sport to come back, the NBA, because they do have the plan in place. The NFL, I mean, the NFL still got time, but the NHL isn't quite there yet. Baseball obviously isn't there yet in a financial aspect or a logistics aspect. So maybe the NBA says, okay, we're willing to take that risk. Maybe we have a finals where our star players happen to not be in it. You're rolling the dice at that point, but we would still be the only sport back besides golf and NASCAR and all those others. We'd be the only team sport back. Maybe that's enough. Maybe, the TV money is going to roll in at that point, or you're going to have all the eyes on you. So there's so many different angles here, but to recap, I mentioned the Phillies, mentioned Zeke Elliott, you mentioned the PGA player. It's still unnamed at this time. Someone on the PGA Tour is tested positive. An unnamed 49ers player tested positive. He was working out with a bunch of other players, still waiting on results from those other guys. And then the big one, 28 total student athletes from Clemson, including 21 or 23 of them were football players, tested positive because they were allowed back on campus, and they started working out together, or they were around each other getting ready for what we presume would be a college football season. That's a lot of people. The 21, 23 on the same team and 28 total student athletes on your campus. That's a lot. And college is an interesting case because in professional sports, we say, okay, quarantine them for 2 weeks, and they're still going to get paid, like an injured player would still get paid and whatnot. That it makes sense. But in college, before the season even gets going, if you have to sit out because of the coronavirus, I mean, how is this working with scholarships? Is it just treated like an injury? What happens? Because again, these guys aren't getting paid. They're giving a scholarship to go to school. What happens if a player speaks up and says, well, you know what, I don't feel comfortable coming back and playing, or being, in close proximity to everyone? Is the team going to take their scholarship away? Is that really fair? That's a whole nother debate.
Imagine the look for that university, though.
Yeah, it would be extremely bad PR.
I can't see it.
Right. I hope that there is protection in place for the players, because at the end of the day, we mentioned this last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, with the NBA. If there's players out there that aren't comfortable coming back, they by no means should be criticized for that. Please don't come. Right. This is your profession. This is your life. I am not going to make that decision for you. So And I would put student athletes above even the professionals in that sense because, again, you're not getting paid. You are getting a scholarship that is worth something, but that's where the debate comes in. Like, if they want to sit out, what kind of repercussions are they going to face? It's just a really, really tough situation. So,
and it's one of those things too. Not to, I mean, it seems pretty simple. Like, if you don't want to play, you shouldn't have to. They shouldn't be able to take your scholarship. But really, stranger things have happened in this world, as we've seen over the course of even our lifetimes and lifetimes before us. But you're right; it would be an awful look, and you would really hope that it wouldn't happen. But it's possible.
So continuing off of that, I'm going to do my best. I typed out my thorough notes here on Major League Baseball because what a insane week it has been for Major League Baseball. This entire process has been just so frustrating, so annoying. We have both said that we're tired of talking about it, but that was before this past week happened, and this past week was unlike anything we've seen before through this negotiation process. So it's definitely worth talking about. And it started with, last week we were talking about the draft. I believe it was the same day of the draft, the first round. Rob Manfred comes out, eases everyone's tensions and says there will 100% be baseball played this year. Less than a week later, Monday, I believe, he says, I am no longer 100% sure that there will be a baseball season. Even though just a day before, Sunday, I don't know, Saturday, what it was after we recorded. I know that much. The MLB Players Union basically ended the negotiations on their end. They were fed up with what the owners were offering. They shut it down. They said, tell us when and where. And when they said that, it was in reference to Rob Manfred and his power to implement a short season, which would be roughly 50 games. This was something that was agreed upon back in March. I had completely forgotten about it. It made me feel kind of stupid because I spent so much time on last week's episode ranting and raving about how we won't have baseball this year. Now, a week later, that may still be true, but at the time I felt stupid because I was saying that in reference to the negotiations, where even if the negotiations didn't work out, Rob Manfred could still implement a shortened season. He had that power. So that's the Players Union said, we're done negotiating, just tell us when and where. Basically saying we're fed up and we're going to come back and hold this against you during the next CBA negotiations in the next year. That's going to be a bloodbath, by the way, at this point. Just that's a whole nother side note. We're going to be talking about that ad nauseum when that comes back around. But that was then Rob Manfred comes out and says, even though everyone knows he has the power to implement a season, he says, I'm no longer 100% sure we're going to have a season. What? What kind of quote is that? That's probably the dumbest thing you could possibly say. Less than a week earlier, you said we're 100% going to have baseball. What the hell are you doing? Again, I get it. We all know he has the power to implement a season. So to me, when he said that, he's stalling here. He's stalling because it's a little too soon to implement that 50-game season. There's still time technically, and as we know, the negotiations have picked back up. There's still time to figure out a season longer than 50 games. So I know he wants to stall, run out the clock, and then when it's safe for him to implement his shortened season and institute his power, his control as commissioner, everything will skate by. But he's scared right now to do that because if he does it too early, the Players Union can file a grievance and say that you weren't negotiating in good faith, you shut down negotiations. Quite frankly, I don't even understand what the words coming out of my own mouth right now because the Players Union was the ones that said, tell us when and where, and then you're going to turn around and file a grievance if he tells you when and where too quickly. At this point, it's clear that the Players Union, as much as I had sided with them over the owners in the past, it's clear that their intentions are more towards figuring out a proper CBA and figuring out or getting back at the owners or whatever. They're more concerned with that than they are actually playing baseball at this point, because you wouldn't like hold this over Rob Manfred's head and have this whole organized, statement from your top players, the whole tell us when and where. And then if he told you when and where on the spot, you would turn around and file a grievance. Like, it's clear you're not concerned with playing baseball at this point. You're just concerned with getting back.
I don't think anyone's negotiating in good faith, right?
No, it's all spiteful. And again, this leads me to my next point, and I hope I'm doing a decent job here to synthesize this. But we finally had Tony Clark, the spokesperson for the Players Union, sit down face-to-face. For the first time, someone from both sides. You had Rob Manfred representing as the commissioner, representing the owners in the league, and Tony Clark representing the Players Union, actually meet face-to-face. I know there's extenuating circumstances because of the pandemic, and I'm sure there were maybe some phone calls and video calls, Zoom, whatever it was in the past, but I think a lot of the negativity that stemmed from this was a result of not being able to meet face-to-face. And it wasn't until this week that both sides actually sat down, and boy, that opened up a whole nother can of worms. But before I get into that, let's cut this in half. I want to hear your thoughts on Rob Manfred, his quote, going back on saying 100% certain on baseball being played. How are you feeling about him as the commissioner? And then we'll get into the negotiations circling back and coming back.
Yeah, I think everybody, going into this thought he was, one of the least hated, I feel like, commissioners, and now he's probably jumping to the top of most lists. I don't see him too well right now. I think, he's just flip-flopping is becoming the age of 2020. I mean, you say one thing one week, the next week you change your mind and say the other thing. I don't think that's it. I mean, it should be a big deal, but we see this in all walks of life at this point. So to me, it bothers me less. It doesn't surprise me anymore when people do this. I think that there was no reason to say 100% at any point. I don't see, nothing's 100%. I think that's an old adage is like death and taxes are the only sure things in life. Like, I think that's a good way to go about things. There's no 100% guarantees. There's no surefire hits or misses, this, that, or the other. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I think his popularity is obviously going down. People are getting really frustrated about this. And as far as the players, I mean, it seems like they've got ulterior motives. Rob Manfred has ulterior motives. I'm not sure anybody really cares if they play baseball this season at this point. And I think it looks bad because, you see the Korean leagues are fine. The Japanese leagues are starting back up. Maybe their coronavirus situations are different. But the MLB can't even get to a point where they can see if they can start playing. They don't even have a plan. And they're a league that, is in danger of missing an entire season. Now, whether the other seasons wrap up or not is one thing, but skipping an entire year is a big deal. Money-wise, revenue-wise, popularity of the game. And it's already a game that's, the popularity's been declining over the years. So I don't think this is going to help. I hope they figure it out. Again, for me, it's the least of my concerns as far as which leagues I wish would get going or come back. But they might be doing some irreparable damage here to the state of baseball. And like you said, it's only going to get uglier as they start to negotiate CBA stuff. And the sport's not in a very good spot right now. I think we can all agree on that.
So to continue off of the meeting face-to-face between Tony Clark and Rob Manfred, all hell broke loose on social media. He had a certain beat writer who will go unnamed right now. He's come up before on the podcast. He's made the rounds in the Orioles world for saying some things about the Orioles and teams going through a rebuild. I'll give you a hint as to who it is there. But we're not going to speak his name because he's an absolute clown.
It rhymes with Ron Payman.
Yeah, if you didn't know already, there it is. He's, God, this guy. I mean, he jumps out immediately while this meeting is taking place or right after this meeting and saying, both sides are very close to a deal. A deal is very close to being done. And the players' union immediately jumps out and after that says, no, we are not close. We had a meeting. It was a long meeting. It was good for both sides to come together and talk face to face, but no deal is close. Let's cut that out right now. So, yeah, I mean, it was just it's a roller coaster this week. The highs and lows of all this. It seems like they're close. They're not. It's a mess. So we are back to negotiating, though. That is the one thing that has come of this meeting, is that an offer was made by the owners. They're back to negotiating. They said, we'll give you a full prorated salary. That was a big deal. So we've got the money, the prorated salary, full pay is off the table. That's been settled. And now we've come down to bickering over how many games. And this is where it's just they've lost me. I felt like I held on long enough. I was riding the bull long enough. The bull has bucked me off its back at this point. I'm done. I'm so fed up. You're arguing over 60 games versus 70. 10 games, guys. 10 freaking games. I mean, can we not do this? You clearly.
I'm really hoping for 50 games.
Well, if they keep punting back and forth, then Rob Manfred will have the chance to implement his power. But again, we've had the discussions just a couple minutes ago on the podcast. Is that even going to be possible from a health and logistics standpoint? But from a financial standpoint, from a negotiating standpoint, we could get to a point where Rob Manfred has a chance to implement that. But, man, this is just – we're talking about 10 games here. You've been given your full prorated salary. We've got other stuff being argued right now, expanded playoffs. I feel like both sides are okay with that, at least for now. We got the owners want to put, advertisements on the jerseys to help recoup some of the lost money, but – if you think that they're only going to do that for 1 year, you're a fool. If they actually get that passed, it's not going away. They're not going to do that for just 1 year and then say, okay, back to normal in 2021. If you put ads on the jerseys now, they're going to be there forever. That's just how it is.
That doesn't really bother me all that much, though.
In the grand scheme of things, not a big deal, but it is an added, caveat here. And also, you actually have things that will change the game. Universal DH is being proposed. Expanded playoffs, like I said. There is actual serious things being, negotiated here around the game. So, I don't know, man. Quite frankly, my head is spinning. I don't even know what I'm even talking about at this point. But it comes back to what we were just talking about with the NFL, really all team sports. Is this even worth it? I mean, we got the 9 people in the Phillies camp that have tested positive. What about the Toronto Blue Jays? I mean, let's say in theory, the owners and the players union come to an agreement today. They hash out they meet in the middle, 65 games, whatever it is, or the owners concede 70 games. And we've settled on this format loosely. We've settled on the money. And now we actually have to sit down and decide when and where we're going to play. And you've got the Phillies, people testing positive. There's going to be plenty of other players around the league that test positive. What about Toronto? You've got to deal with traveling from one country to another. That right now is heavily restricted by the coronavirus. I believe Canada's operating under, you can't come into the country. I don't know the specifics of it, but they're not letting all outside forces in. And they certainly wouldn't let people come in for a 3-game series and then leave and then come back, later, a month later. The Toronto would have to find a place to play in the United States. There's just so much going on right now. I feel like it's not even worth it. We already know that the next CBA negotiation for baseball is going to be an absolute mess. Coming to some sort of agreement now, would it help ease tensions then? Maybe, I guess, but I feel like the damage has already been done. And again, both sides are just so angry, particularly the players' union. And they do have reason to be angry. I'm not denying that. They have been, the way owners kind of mistreat players in the baseball in particular, like we talk about it all the time, the minor league system, the players are paid like absolute crap. I mean, they get paid peanuts. They're paid a stipend, for God's sake. They don't even get a salary. The whole system is a mess. And a lot of changes are probably going to be coming in the next CBA. But like I said, that's going to be a bloodbath. We'll get there when we get there. I've said what I've said. Do you have anything else on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see us getting to a point where it gets figured out. I don't think that they care enough to get it figured out. I mean, think of it this way. There's no league that looks worse right now than baseball. And they were the league that hadn't even gotten started. So they, I guess maybe that's more challenging than the other leagues. So maybe we should give them some grace for that. But they're the only group that hasn't even gotten a plan in place that, at least we could say, okay, it makes sense. And then think of it this way too. I don't know how often you compromise in life, but at some time, it is what it is. Everybody has to do it. But it eventually comes up down the road that you compromised. Like, hey, remember when we conceded X? Like, you should give us Y. There's always another compromise. It's one after the other after the other. Somebody always feels slighted at the end of the day. So I think that's something to monitor too. They could get this thing worked out, but like you said, when they go to negotiate the new CBA, you don't think that whatever concessions were made are going to come up and they're going to bring back that bad blood? I mean, that's just academic to me. So we'll see what happens with baseball. Again, I'm not optimistic about any of the sports right now, and they are, to me, by far the furthest away. So that would put them even lower on my optimism scale. So I think I would be surprised at this point. I don't really care either way. If they take a year off, they take a year off. It's not going to impact me really all that much. The Orioles aren't supposed to be very good. I will say this. If we get a 50-game season, don't let the Orioles get hot, baby. Yep. We could be in the playoffs, and then you gets to be really weird times. So it's a mess. You're right. That's the best way to describe it right now.
All right. Well, it's going to be a longer episode this week. That's fine. I know the listeners will probably enjoy that. Haven't had the most to talk about in the past, so it feels good to have finally stuff to talk about. But do have one more topic here, and I'll try to be brief about this because it's nothing that needs to be discussed at length. But let's bring back a segment here. Let's bring back an old favorite segment. I can't even remember the last time we did this segment. What an idiot.
You, sir, are an idiot.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
Can I just say that of all the idiots, in all the idiot villages, in all the idiot worlds, you stand alone, my friend.
And so this week, I had to bring this guy up. He's someone familiar to the Orioles fan base, a former Oriole. Has continued to make the rounds on social media in his retirement after his playing days. His name's Aubrey Huff. We all know him. He's very outspoken on social media, has some what people would call controversial opinions, and usually I let 99% of what this guy says skate by. I really pay it no mind. I personally think he's an idiot, but that's just me. But his comments this week about, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago at this point, I don't even know, but his video where he doubled down on his tweet came out this week. He's got something to say about wearing a mask in public. I'll play his comments here.
I posted a tweet yesterday about no longer willing to comply for wearing a mask inside a grocery store. And the liberal left, the soy boy professors and the blue checkmark crazy cat ladies were in unison guilt-shaming me for threatening the lives of millions of innocent people. Now, if you want to wear a mask and live in fear the rest of your life, it's certainly your prerogative, but the vast majority of well-adjusted, sane, common-sense people that aren't sheep, that can reason for themselves, agree with me. I was at the grocery store today, and the two ladies that were checking me out were wearing these masks, and I love to make people like that smile and laugh and have a great conversation. You couldn't even see the wrinkles in their eyes with their smiles. They looked so beat down and run down. This is not a selfish thing for me. This is a thing for me to try and free Americans so they can freely breathe. It's not healthy to breathe in your own CO2 all the time. And it seems like everybody's a coronavirus expert. Listen, if I, God forbid, get the coronavirus, guess what I do? I go home, I get well, and I go back and live my life. I would rather do that. Hell, I would rather die from coronavirus than to live the rest of my life in fear and wearing a damn mask.
So basically, he doesn't want to wear a mask in public really for no good reason other than he just doesn't feel like it. He's using all your typical buzzwords here: soy boys, sheep, liberals, liberal idiots, etc. Blah, blah, blah. We know how Aubrey Huff feels. I really don't get the crowd that is so against wearing a mask. Like, obviously, if we don't have to wear a mask, I'm not going to wear one. At some point down the road, there's going to be a time where we don't have to, and a majority of people aren't wearing a mask in public because we have a vaccine and the numbers have dropped significantly. But for the time being, if I'm going to the grocery store and I'm going to be in there for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, however long it is, not that long in the grand scheme of things, I'm wearing a mask. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but for God's sakes, it's not like you're jumping through hoops here. You know, I just don't get why there's so many people out there that are so against the masks. And really what it comes down to is I think people have made this a political issue. Wearing a mask has become a political thing. Why is that a political thing? It shouldn't be a political thing. Just put on a damn mask so you can protect yourself and you can protect other people. It's common courtesy. It's basically the same thing as, like, if you come down with, forget COVID, you know, in the past, if you were sick, stay home from work for the day. See how you feel tomorrow. Stay home from work for a couple days. See how you don't bring that into the office. It's the same common courtesy as applied here by just putting on a mask for 5 minutes when you leave the house. It's not a big deal. So I haven't heard a logical explanation for not wearing a mask yet, other than, and again, this isn't logical. The only thing I've heard is, well, I don't feel like it. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. So Aubrey Huff, I mean, he's said so many stupid things in this video. You heard the clip. He said that, you know, breathing in your own carbon dioxide all the time is bad. You're not going to die from wearing a mask in the store for 30 minutes. You're going to be fine. Don't worry. He says he's like liberating other Americans by rallying against masks. He's speaking up for the voiceless here. Shut up. I mean, there actually are a lot of people out there that are very vocal against masks. I was sort of naive to that. I didn't think there was as many people as I thought, but there's a lot of people out there. And again, comes down to making it a political issue when really it shouldn't be a political thing at all, but here we are. And the funniest thing here is when he says, you know, I went to the grocery store and the cashiers that, you know, were ringing up my items, I could tell that they were so depressed, and I couldn't see the smiles on their face as I usually like to converse with them, and, you know, they just look so dead in the eyes. It's like, maybe it's because they're working a minimum wage job during the pandemic, and they've got a doofus like Aubrey Huff standing in front of them not wearing a mask. Like, maybe that's why they're not smiling, or they don't seem too keen to be conversing with you, buddy. Honestly, this guy's just attention seeking. I gave him the attention he wanted there. Plenty of other people have. You're not a patriot because you don't want to put on a mask. You're not some macho tough guy. You're not a warrior because you don't want to put on a mask. It's just common courtesy. It really has no impact on you. And again, the last thing I'll say, give me one legitimate reason why you can't wear a mask other than just saying, I don't feel like it.
No, I'll start off by saying I loved Huff Daddy as a player. He was like one of my favorite Orioles. Since then, he's obviously kind of turned into a bit of a buffoon. I wish I didn't have to wear a mask, but I'm not going to sit here and start a crusade against mask wearing. I think that's kind of a fruitless endeavor in general. It's not that inconvenient. I don't like wearing it with my glasses. I get my glasses fogged up, but you know, this isn't the hill to die on, bro. Like, I think that's kind of where I am with this. I think he obviously has shown that he feels a certain way about a certain thing, and he thinks he has some sort of moral obligation to kind of right the wrongs or get this eradicated. And it's a small potatoes thing. It's not that inconvenient. Honestly, it's just not the end of the world. And I think that what you said about, it's not a political, I hate to tell you, man, like, everything's political nowadays. Like, that's the way we're going. And that sucks, obviously. But everybody makes everything about politics now, more than they ever have before. And it's a society we need to get used to living in, because that's the way it's going to go. But I do think overall his premise is pretty stupid. There are people that are upset they have to wear a mask, but I'm not gonna start a fight about it or get too crazy about it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people when I was looking into this and Aubrey Huff's comments, and seeing a lot of people that agreed with him, which again I said I was naive to that. And I saw a lot of people saying, well, masks don't work. The proof is out there. It's like, what are you talking about? Like even if a mask doesn't work to the level that we think it is, or the CDC says it does, it's not hurting you to put on a mask. It has to be doing something. By putting on a mask, you're not making yourself more at risk of getting the disease. There's no way that's possible. But if it's not limiting things as much as we thought it was, then okay, maybe I'll give you that. But by putting on a mask, you're not hurting yourself. And the last thing I'll say on this, because I thought it was really, it's not funny. It's just kind of sad, and I hope it was a troll. But working at the Fan this week, the Aubrey Huff's comments came up, played them on air, and obviously some people in the text line, that's where I saw some people that sided with Aubrey Huff, very vocal in their siding with him. And someone, and again, I really hope this is a troll, because there's no way this could be a real person, but someone says, I can't wear a mask because I have COPD. What? That's a lung disease, for those who don't know what it is. You shouldn't even be leaving the house, my friend. If you're claiming that you're not wearing a mask because you have a lung disease and it's not easy for you to breathe with a mask on, you're the exact person we're trying to protect here, my friend. I'm not wearing a mask to protect myself. I am to some extent, but I'm wearing a mask so someone like you doesn't get this disease, which could actually kill you. It's not going to kill me, most likely. It's going to kill you if you get it, probably. I just hope that was a troll or somebody. I don't even know. If that's a real person, God bless. Don't leave the house, please. Like, if you have COPD and you're concerned about not wearing a mask because that's limiting your impact to breathe, if you think a mask is going to make life difficult for you, imagine what happens if you got the coronavirus, my friend. I'll leave it at that. But really, I think that's where we're at here. It's just stupid. But at the very least, it felt good to bring back an old segment. Maybe we can have that pop up. Don't be a jerk. Maybe we can get that going more. We sort of neglected those and forgot about them. So with less and less to talk about, again, this week was an outlier. We had quite a bit to talk about, but for the most part, with less and less to talk about, maybe a return to those segments would help us fill some time. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some more of those. And that's episode 107. A long one, like I said, hopefully an enjoyable one, but we had plenty to talk about. We'll be back next week with episode 108. Maybe some good news. I doubt it, but we'll see. The direction we're going, I'm not seeing any good news, but who knows? At the very least, maybe we'll have some interesting things to talk about, more bickering between the two sides of the MLB. And, only time will tell. So we'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.